Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Vicki. You're a tough act to follow, so I'll do my best. Thank you, everybody, for being here on this Thursday night. Is anybody still watching the Cubs game? Okay. All right. Well, at least that's over with now. But as Vicki mentioned, my name is Adam Lucio. I co-own and co-founded Illinois Storm Chasers. Does anybody here follow us on Facebook? That's a lot of hands. That's what I like to see. For those who don't, we do have a Facebook page. Just look for Illinois Storm Chasers, and you can find us there. So what are we going to be talking about tonight? We'll do a little brief introduction. We're going to talk all about storm chasing, the life of a storm chaser, the things I love about it, the things I don't like about it. We'll go into a little bit of tornado genesis and what we look for when we're trying to forecast and chase tornadoes. We'll talk about our own climatology here in Illinois. How do we compare to some of the other states in the country? Do we even have tornadoes in Illinois? Maybe, maybe not. And I'm going to try to get through all that as fast as possible because then we'll show some pictures and some video. I tried to do the least amount of talking possible because we all know you just want to see the videos of my truck getting destroyed. That's usually everybody's favorite part of the presentation. I don't take offense to it. It's my favorite part about storm chasing. And then my other favorite part is I want to hear your questions, your comments, if you have any stories you'd like to share with me. At the end, we're going to open it up to the floor. So I'm going to try to get through my stuff as quickly as possible. So a little bit about me. I started storm spotting in the year of 1998. Basically, when I got my driver's license, that'll clue you into my age. I try to lie about it, but I got my driver's license in 1998, and that's basically when I started my storm spotting, chasing career. I just jumped in and started driving around in thunderstorms. I thought I knew what I was doing, but it turns out I really didn't. I took my first official training in the year 2002 from the National Weather Service. Those are free classes that they offer, very informative, very helpful. We here at Illinois Storm Chasers also do spotter training. We do separate spotter training presentations. I went on my first official storm chase, I like to call it, on the date April 20th, 2004. Does anybody around here remember that day specifically in the local area? That was a pretty significant day around here. That was the day of the Utica tornado that hit down by Starved Rock, April 20th, 2004. That's what I count as my first official storm chase, the first day I went out before the storms formed, instead of just waiting for them to be in my backyard and driving around in circles. So that was kind of the first day that I forecasted the storms to happen. I didn't see a tornado that day, but we know a lot of them happened around here. Finally, in the year 2007, I decided, hey, I'm all in. I'm going to start going to the plains, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Montana, Wyoming, Alabama. Anywhere these things happen is where I'm going to go. And I just updated the count. Over 170 tornadoes documented right now. I was going to see if I could hit the big 200 this year, but 2018 was an exceptionally slow year, especially for me personally. Has anybody ever heard of the show Storm Chasers? That was on Discovery Channel. Good show. I liked it. I watched every episode. I still do once in a while. You may have noticed there's a vehicle on there called the TIV. I was actually a backup driver for the TIV. Now, they never put me on the camera, but Casey's are actually good friends of mine, so they said, hey, when our primary driver can't drive for us, would you like to come and do this for me? Before they could hang up on the phone, I was there with my suitcases like, all right, let's go. I'm ready. So, and I also work with some disaster relief charities as well. I help out a charity called Storm Assist, stormassist.org. I've got a little link to them at the end. Because unfortunately, these tornadoes do come with a very unfortunate side, and that's affecting communities, people's lives, people's property. So we work very closely with several charities to help do fundraising and as a way to give back. So a little bit about the history of storm chasing. Which person do you find yourself being in the case of a tornado? Are you the guy screaming, "Oh my!" I had to blotch out a word there. But are you the guy screaming, running away, or the guy running towards? I know which one I am, but there's two kinds of people in the world, and I definitely know which one I am. Little known fact, one of the first documented storm chasers was actually Benjamin Franklin. He would go out there on his horse and go out there and try to follow and look at thunderstorms. That's more hardcore than I'll ever be. I do so in the quote-unquote safety of my vehicle. This guy's out here on a horse. I don't know if I have the Jones to do that. And storm chasing is definitely fueled by passion and not money. And surprisingly, there's actually thousands of us out there today. It can actually get a little crowded out there on a big weather day. It's like driving on 294. Thankfully, I didn't catch any traffic on the way down here. I left my house at like 3 o'clock, and I got here at 6:30, so that's pretty good coming from Chicago. So we'll dive into it a little bit. What happens before the storm? Well, this is typically what you see on my laptop screen all the time. We're looking at forecast models. I'm looking at forecast data. If you follow us on Illinois Storm Chasers on Facebook, on our website, how are we putting together these forecasts? Well, we're looking at all sorts of forecast models, and there are dozens of these things out there. So we're looking at plots, we're looking at SPC outlooks, we're looking at live visual satellite. And we look at these to try to sniff out weather patterns that are conductive for tornadoes. There's a lot we still don't know about tornadoes, but we do know the general weather pattern that needs to be in place in order for them to happen. So we're trying to sniff these things out days in advance, and in the best case scenarios, we can sometimes sniff out a major tornado outbreak 10 days in advance. So we'll first get wind that, hey, here's a weather system worth watching, and we'll follow it through all the way till 10 days, and it verifies. Now, sometimes it completely falls apart, and we get nothing. But there are literally dozens of these forecast models. Again, anyone who follows us, you probably hear us say GFS model, NAM model, Euro model, if you're used to reading some of the articles that I put out, and you're wondering, what does that stand for? Those are the names of some of the forecast models that we're using. And these models are ran multiple times a day. Some models every 4 hours. Some models are run every hour. Some models only run twice a day. So that's another reason we're always preaching to seek out the latest information. But this is kind of how my day always begins, when I'm thinking, am I going to go storm chasing? Do I want to try to do this? So a typical chase day starts days in advance. Now, it's a little dark on here, but the funny story about this photo, that's the back of my head looking at the computer screens right there. That's actually taken by my now ex-girlfriend. She took that picture and sent it to me and goes, "This is all I ever see, is the back of my head staring at the computer screen." We are constantly scanning these weather models, trying to sniff out and analyze the data to just see, is there going to be a ripple in the flow that's going to bring us some weather? So then eventually we'll go ahead and we'll get something. Now comes the Storm Chasers version of Christmas. We're charging all the gear. Do you ever go to put up your Christmas lights and you lift them up and, oh, geez, they're all tangled up? That's my chase gear. I organize it, I put it back in the tote, but then when it's time to go chase, I open it up, and for some reason it's always a mess. So we got to start planning days. We got to get the gear charged. Now, what else do we do for storm chasing? We drive a lot. Lots of driving to the target area. If you're not the type of person that likes spending a lot of time in cars, storm chasing is definitely not for you. Because storm chasing is about 90% driving, 9% eating unhealthy food, and 1% actually seeing weather. Now, these photos here are the odometer pictures of my truck for the last 5 years. And if you notice this last one here, all these nice lights are lit up. That's because my trusty storm chasing vehicle finally just bit the dust about a month ago at 319,634 miles. So unfortunately, I don't have the vehicle here today. I usually like to show it to people. I'm currently in the market for a new vehicle to replace it. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. Probably another Ford Expedition. The first one served me very well, but that's all right. All right, so, all right, let's talk. I'm in the market. My previous vehicle was a 2006 Ford Expedition, and the thing was an absolute beast. It never broke down on me once while chasing, with racking up all these miles. Absolutely loved it. Great vehicle. I'm sad to see it go. There's a Craigslist ad for it now if anyone's interested. For $1,000, an Expedition that doesn't run can be yours that's covered with hail dents. So just a thought. So we do a lot of driving, and then we get to our target area, excuse me, and we wait. Are the storms going to happen? I don't know. All right, somebody sees a cloud. So there we are. That's actually my truck right there in the background. I'm actually not in the picture. I'm still sitting in the driver's seat trying to catch a nap. These are all my buddies congregating in the same parking lot. And then finally a storm is blowing up. We got a storm in the distance. All right, things are getting good. Initiation, the chase is on. Now what are we trying to do? The primary goal of storm chasers, for most of them, is to get in a position, and I'll use the term safely in quotation marks, get in a position to view and document the tornado. The other thing we're wanting to do is report the severe weather to the National Weather Service. This is very critical. Now, most storm chasers, myself included, 90% of the reason we're out there is for our own personal enjoyment. We're fascinated by weather. I'm fascinated by weather. I want to see it. I want to document it. I want to witness it. I want to experience it. But while we're out there, we have a little bit of work to do. We need to help the National Weather Service with ground truth reports. to relay the information to you guys. So when they're going to issue a severe thunderstorm warning, or more importantly, a tornado warning, it helps them to know what exactly is going on, because they're just looking at the radar from behind the screens. So they can kind of sniff things out on radar and kind of guess. But if we're out there in the fields, I can call the National Weather Service and say, hey, this is what's going on with the storm. This thing's about to drop a tornado. You need to get the warning sirens going and that sort of thing. Or I can call and say the opposite. They'll call me and say, hey, we've got this interesting looking storm on radar. What's it doing? And I'll say, it's doing nothing. It's all bark and no bite. Don't worry about it. So we're in constant communication to try to get the most accurate information out there and possible. And of course, we want to capture pictures. We want to capture video. I enjoy sharing that stuff. I like to do a little bit of photography, a little bit of videography as well. And then in the unfortunate case of a disaster, we want to be there to help. Many times, storm chasers are the first people on the scene when a town is hit, because we're following right behind the tornado. It unfortunately impacts the town. We're usually the first ones there on the scene before EMS can arrive. Many of us are trained in first responding, CPR certified, and all that stuff, myself included. We take the FEMA courses, and we've gone through all that. So we're ready to assist in the time of need if it's unfortunately necessary. So if things go well on a storm chase, here's what I come home with. Cool picture of a tornado. Cool picture of a tornado. Big hail. I like big hail. It dents up my truck. My auto mechanic likes big hail because I come in looking for new windshields all the time. So we have a good relationship, my auto mechanic and I. We're very close. And we get some nice imagery, cool cloud structures, cool, and that sort of thing. Now here's what everybody likes. What about when things don't go well? This is what you all want to see later in the video. We get my windshield, front windshield, smashed up by hail. That's happened probably 3 or 4 times. My back windshield gets blown out by a tornado. I'll show you video of that later on. Or we get stuck in the mud. So there's my trusty Expedition right there, stuck in the mud. This was in Bowdle, South Dakota, after we got chased onto a farmer's field by 3 tornadoes. Needless to say, that turned into a little bit of a fiasco with us trying to get out there. Rightfully so. The farmer was not too happy. We had to get some law enforcement involved, and but we were running for our lives, so it's just kind of one of those things that happens. So this was a couple years ago in Kansas. I was driving down a dirt road with a tornado next to me. All of a sudden, the flat dirt road did this. And into the ditch I went. I could go forward, I could go backwards. I just couldn't get out of the ditch. So we sat there for a while. Thankfully, a nice gentleman showed up and pulled me out. And then this picture here is from the Rochelle tornado back in 2015. So we never like to see that damage and destruction, but unfortunately, sometimes it does happen. So I don't consider this to be a good storm chase when I have to stop it because a town gets hit. That's never our goal, is to witness the destruction. We're there to document nature and that sort of thing and try to understand these storms a little better. But you get the bad with the good. So this is always a fun topic to talk about. The life of the storm chaser. What are the pros of doing what I do? For one, the travel and the adventure side of it. I like to travel. I don't like to stay in one place very long. I start getting antsy. I start getting kind of twitchy. So we travel all across the country trying to find these storms. Now, most people go on vacations to somewhere where there's good weather. You want to go to Florida. You want to go to the Virgin Islands where the weather's calm and sunny, margaritas on the beach, that kind of thing. I want to go where the weather's awful, terrible. So it's a little harder said than done, surprisingly. What I need to do is start planning vacations for good weather, and then the bad weather will show up. I think that's what I need to start doing. I like to experience nature, and one of my favorite parts is meeting people and hearing their stories. We roll up onto these little towns in Kansas, Oklahoma, in the middle of nowhere. They all come up to me, y'all storm chaser? Well, yeah, you see the truck. And they always have a personal story to share, and I love hearing those. So and then they have some questions about the weather. They're like, well, you're in my town. Is this going to be bad? And I can kind of ease their fears a little bit or make them worry more, depending on the situation of the day. I always say, don't follow me. If you see me peeling out of here with my camera sticking out of the window, it's time for you to go home. So I do like interacting with people, helping them to learn and understand and help them. And then we also provide a service while fulfilling a passion. That's a great feeling, helping the National Weather Service, helping people while fulfilling a personal passion of mine. There's no better thing in life than to be able to do what you love and help people at the same time. And again, we assist people in a time of need. I chased the very deadly tornado outbreak of April 27th, 2011. I don't know if anybody remembers that one, but Alabama and Mississippi just got absolutely raked those days. And we came up on the disaster scenes, and people were coming up to us. They were all banged up. They were all scared. They lost their cell phones. They couldn't find their loved ones. So we were giving them the phones, trying to help them call people, driving them to the hospitals if needed, giving them water and clean towels to wipe their faces and that sort of thing. So, we're there to help people. And then we get to create beautiful images and video. Storms aren't always ugly and mean. We get some really pretty cloudscapes and very beautiful scenes. I like to create the pictures. I like to sell the pictures. I like to share the pictures. There's a little sense of artwork that goes into it. And then I also like to inspire people. I get a lot of messages. I get a lot of comments every day saying, hey, I like watching you do what you do. How can I do it? You're inspiring me to follow my passions, my dreams. And I like to be able to help people pursue their own personal journeys in whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be storms. That just happens to be the most common questions I get. But it can be anything. How do you find the time to do it? How are you able to get away and do this so much? I can offer them some pointers and things to do. But it's not all rainbows and roses. It does come with a few downsides. Number one, it's very expensive, especially when gas is high. The year 2012, when gas was $4.50, that lovely Ford Expedition of mine, we weren't friends that year, because every gas tank was about $120, and it takes me 3 of them to get out there. Now, so that's $360 just to get out there, but I got to come home. I'm out $720 just to go there and back. That's assuming I'm even going to see a storm. That also doesn't count the gas to drive around and chase the storm. So the dollar bills can rack up very quickly in this game. And then you've got hotels. Thankfully, I have a lot of friends out there, so hotels aren't too big a deal for me. But you've got hotels, you've got places to stay. So storm chasing is very expensive. I won't even get into the cameras and all that other stuff that goes into it. So storm chasing is very expensive, like most hobbies and that sort of things are. And it can be a little bit of an obsession. It's constantly going through my brain. I'm giving this presentation right now, and I'm thinking about Hurricane Florence at the same time out there on the East Coast. We're actually going to try to open up the radar and see what's going on with the hurricane when this is done. So I'll show you the radar that I use, some of the things it shows, the live reports as they're coming in. So we'll take a little bit of a look at that as well. It's generally a very short time of the year. Most of the storm chasing gets done March, April, May, maybe the first part of June. Tornadoes can happen any time of the year, but the bulk of chase season is only 3 months of the year. So you spend your whole year waiting and obsessing over a short 3-month period of the year that may or may not even happen. If it's 2018, it didn't happen. If it was 2016, it happened in 2 weeks, and they were the best 2 weeks I've personally experienced. And it's very tough to balance that work and normal life. Again, it's the ironic thing. I booked this presentation in February. We planned this event. What happens today? A landfalling hurricane. The weather doesn't care about personal schedules and personal obligations. So whenever I'm needing to go out there to chase, there's always a birthday. There's always a dinner. There's always a wedding. There's always something going on that I have to miss out on. So thankfully, I've got a very understanding family. They know this is my passion. They know it's a tough thing to do. But that's a very I like to be there for my family and go to these events, but I don't get to choose when I go storm chasing. The weather does. Sure, I can say, yeah, I'm going to go chase this. No, I'm not. But it's not a typical vacation where I'm going to plan to go fishing for a week or plan to go golfing or plan to go Disney World. I can't plan to go see tornadoes because we don't know when they're going to happen. So I have to try to be very last minute and very flexible, which brings me to the next point. 2 points, actually. Always leaving at the last minute. I'm always canceling and ditching on things. And then, I can't commit to anything. It's very tough. So those are some of the cons that come with being a storm chaser. So when we're looking for tornado genesis and tornadoes, what are actually we looking for? So we'll go into just a little bit about basic educational stuff. I'll try to go through this very quickly. But in a nutshell, how do tornadoes form? Does anybody here have a pen or a pencil or some kind of thing, some long, rolly thing? A pen or pencil? If you want to take it out and place it in the palm of your hand, like this. I'll give you folks just a second. So what does this have to do with tornado formation? Well, we'll find out in a second. I see one gentleman knows where I'm going with this already. So you take that pencil or pen or whatever you've got and you set it in the palm of your hand. Now take your other hand and go like this. What happens to the artifact in your hand? It rolls. That right there is what we call wind shear. And when we're talking about tornadoes in the forecast, you hear that word a lot, shear, wind shear. Well, what is wind shear? Wind shear is basically, say you have 5-mile-an-hour winds blowing at the ground. Now we're going to go up 1,000 feet in the atmosphere, and you've got winds moving at 20 miles an hour, maybe from a different direction. That difference in the speed and direction causes that rolling motion that you just did with your pen or pencil in your hand, because you were moving your hand at a different speed, which causes the pencil to roll. And this wind shear is present just about every day outside. You don't see it, you don't feel it, but it's there just about every day. So what happens is you get a thunderstorm going with a strong updraft. It takes this rolling pencil of wind and it sets it upright. This gets our storm to rotate, and this is essentially what causes a tornado to develop. It's a little more complicated than that, but if I have to narrow it down to 3 steps, that's kind of how it works when we're talking about wind shear. Now, a lot of other things have to come into play. We're not going to dive too deep into that, but we'll touch on a few basics. That's a whole nother 2-hour presentation, getting into that stuff. So tornadoes come from a storm called a supercell. These are probably other things that you hear in the forecast. You have ordinary thunderstorms and you have a supercell thunderstorm. Well, what makes a thunderstorm a supercell? It's something called a mesocyclone, which is basically a rotating updraft. All thunderstorms are formed by an updraft of wind rising straight up. But when you get a supercell, that current of wind, instead of rising straight up, will start to spin as it's rising. That's what we call a mesocyclone. And this is a great picture of one I took back in 2015. If you can kind of picture this, you have the air that's rising up, but it's also spinning as it's rising. It's doing this as it's rising. The updraft isn't going straight up. It's going up like this. And these cloud striations are a great visual representation of that. We don't have a tornado yet, but I'm about to show you video of what happened just about 5 minutes after I took this photo. So if you're ever outside watching a thunderstorm and you start to see something like this developing, it's time to start thinking next level type of thunderstorm, supercell here. So that's where the tornadoes are going to come from. So the first thing we want to look for is a lowered rain-free base in the clouds, because we need that constant updraft. This is the updraft area of the storm. You ever looking at storms outside and you see this big flat cloud base? This is all the rain falling off to the side. Now what happens with thunderstorms is if the rain was falling here, it would kill the updraft. What goes up must come down. If the rain falls through your updraft, it cuts off your updraft and your storm can't survive. So you look for what we call a rain-free base, this nice flat base. Your precipitation's falling off to the side here. That's kind of step one in the process. So that's something to note if you're ever watching thunderstorms. What'll then happen is from that rain-free base, we still have a rain-free base, we'll start to get a lowering in the clouds. Now, how many of you have heard the term wall cloud? Probably quite a few of you. So that's kind of the next step in the process. Essentially, all a wall cloud is, that's the most intense area of the updraft. So this whole region of your storm is the updraft region, but this is where it's the strongest, which causes those clouds to condense there. That's kind of your next step that, all right, the storm is starting to get organized. Now, not all wall clouds go on to produce tornadoes, but about 99% of tornadoes come from wall clouds. So it's a very important step in the process, especially if you can visually see the wall cloud rotating. Sometimes you just get blocky wall clouds, they just kind of sit there and don't do nothing, but you want to look for the rotation. That's very important. Now, what happens after the wall cloud is, this is getting a little technical, but we won't get too far into that, is, again, what comes up must come down, right? So on the back side of the thunderstorm, we have something called the rear flank downdraft, or RFD. If you've ever read any of our discussions, you've probably seen that abbreviation, RFD. Not Rockford, rear flank downdraft. So the air is now sinking down on this end of the storm, and it's carving out the clouds. And what that's going to do is it's going to cause that's kind of the final step in the process. So when we see a nice clear shot like that, the storm chasers are going like this, like, all right, we're on to like step 4 of the process. Then we get a funnel cloud. That's pretty obvious. If you see that, you know what it is. Funnel clouds are pretty obvious. And then finally, we get our tornadoes. Now, one of these tornadoes came from this. Anyone want to guess which one? Raise your hand if you think it was this one. Raise your hand if you think it was this one. Okay. Raise your hand if you think it was this one. It was this one on the bottom. So about 5 minutes after I took this photo, I took this video, if it'll play. Play, please. We're driving south to intercept it right now.
I don't want to get in the rain. Oh my God.
That's the new girlfriend freaking out in the back seat.
The rain's coming.
I had to blot out her words.
Oh, debris! Woo!
It's tree debris.
It's only true. Yeah, listen to me.
RFD. It's
Just that RFD talking about.
The RFD gets pretty intense when we're this close.
That is probably about
Across
a
this,
quarter of a block.
Look at the tree debris flying.
Maybe just a little further than the other side of this room. A little bit past the doors, maybe. Now, this particular tornado, this was a different tornado that I shot in Wyoming last year. Just a couple teaser clips of it. This is when a storm chase goes good. We get some video like this. So there's just a couple of, I've got more video for you, but that's kind of from the mesocyclone eventually leads up to that, and that's what we're going for. Now let's see if I can. All right, so where are we at? Climatology. So a little bit more of the nerdy education stuff here. Tornadoes and severe weather are possible year-round. We all kind of know this, so I preach it. But the peak activity is in the spring. Again, that's kind of another thing that we know. But they are possible year-round, especially here in Illinois. We see a secondary peak of activity in the fall. Not a lot of people are thinking about the fall time. We're all dreading the upcoming winter, but fall is actually a secondary peak for tornadoes. We had the big outbreak on November 17th in 2013, and we'll see some video from that day as well. And annually, where does Illinois place? We actually typically place between 4th and 6th when it comes to the states in terms of tornado numbers. So I actually went ahead and I looked at the last several years. You know, when we're talking about storm chasing, what states do we think of? Kansas, Dorothy, Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska, maybe Iowa. They're on this list quite a bit, but here we are. We always see Illinois always seems to make it into the top 10 every year. 2012, 10. 2013, we led the country. We were first. We beat all those guys. Even with Texas being so large, they try to cheat. And they try to be really big. Like, we're just going to be really large and have more ground. We still beat them. 2014, okay, there we are in 10th. 2015, 4. 2016, we were 6. 2017, 7. This year, we're falling a little bit behind. Wisconsin just cheated a couple weeks ago, and they got like 17 brief 10-second, what we call QLCS tornadoes. So they nudged us down a spot. But so we're actually currently in 13th place for this year with 30 tornadoes. But you can see we ranged, in 2013 we had 69. 2015 we had 82. But the 2015 was an active year. There's Texas, those cheaters up there with 228. So, you know, it can vary wildly different from year to year. We can have as little as 20 tornadoes, and I think the state record for a year is 216. In the year, I want to say that was 2006, and I didn't see a single one of them, but that's okay. We don't have to talk about that. So we can have anywhere from about 20 to about 200 tornadoes in Illinois per year. It just depends. But for some reason, you know, not a lot of people think of Illinois as being a hotbed for tornadoes or even a state where storm chases are going to go. But, you know, as we go back the last 6 years, we always find our way into the top 10 list, it seems. So we definitely see our share of activity here. And part of the reason for that is our tornado climatology here in the Midwest and here in Illinois is a little bit more spread out than some of the other states and other parts of the country. So this is kind of Illinois' tornadoes in an average year versus Alabama and Oklahoma. Those were the only charts I could find that were kind of the same time frame to illustrate my point here. So you'll see, like, when we look at Alabama and Oklahoma, they see a really massive peak, typically in the month of May, or I think in Alabama it's April. we see a similar peak up here, but we also see more activity in the summer when they die off. Oklahoma, they don't get tornadoes in June, July, August. We still have more of a threat. So their tornado season down there in parts of the South is certainly more potent. They have like a more violent peak, but then it drops off to almost nothing the rest of the year. Versus here in Illinois, we don't see a big dramatic peak like they do. Ours are kind of more spread out year-rounds, but not as active as they get. So you're more likely to see a tornado in Illinois in January in Illinois than you are in Oklahoma. You're more likely to see a tornado in Illinois in August than you are in Alabama. It's just the way the jet stream patterns favor. The Midwest is kind of more of a dull, spread out year-round threat. So that's why we end up seeing these things. So I find that to be very interesting, and how that kind of works. So, and then of course, a little bit of mandatory safety stuff here if everybody doesn't know what to do when a tornado warning is issued. Do as I say, not as I do, because I run outside with my camera and sometimes a choice beverage in hand, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Do as I say, not as I do. You want to get into the house, you want to get into the lowest cover, typically a bathroom, interior closet, that sort of thing. You want to get down and you want to cover up. A new thing that we're starting to preach now, and a lot of organizations are catching on to, is to put on a helmet. Sounds a little silly, but most of the injuries and fatalities in tornadoes are caused by falling debris or folks getting hit in the head with something. I won't go too much into the gory details, but the unfortunate things, they're not pretty, so wear a helmet. So we've actually done several drives with schools where we've organized drives for people to bring in old football helmets, old baseball helmets, that sort of thing. And we put together weather preparedness kits to keep in your basement. You've got a helmet for every family member. You've got flashlights, weather radios, and that sort of thing. So that's kind of a new thing that we're starting to find out has been beneficial to a lot of people. Again, it sounds silly. I got to go in the basement and put my crash helmet on, but compared to the alternative, I think it's worth the risk. Now the National Weather Service, we even do selfie contests now. When you're in your tornado shelter with your safety gear, everybody with their helmets on. So make it a little fun family experience. Now, this is one I get a lot. A tornado never going to happen here. We got buildings. We got a river. We got a mountain, a lake. Can't happen here. Oh, it surely can. So none of those myths are true. Your grandpa's knee will not protect you from a tornado. Lake Michigan does not protect us for tornadoes. The cornfields to the west, they don't protect us from tornadoes. None of that stuff is true. It all just depends on the weather patterns. So I like to throw this slide in here, and the one I like to point out the most is this one down here. Salt Lake City, Utah, an F3 tornado goes right through downtown. Here you've got a city in a mountain next to a lake in a downtown area, and the tornado's going right through it. Tornado doesn't care about the mountains, the buildings, the lakes. They go wherever they want to go. So that's kind of an example I always like to throw to show people. Like, yeah, they can't happen here. So we want to dispel the little myth. It's been a while since a tornado has struck the immediate Chicago area, so we get some complacency over time that I try to preach and preach and preach and preach, but people still don't listen, and that's okay until it happens. And then again, here's a little bit about the charity that we work for, stormassist.org. If you want to look them up, they're a great charity. We do these events. This here is an example after the Washington tornado, November 17th, 2013. That's a picture of me handing the mayor a check for $2,500 because of these T-shirts that we sold. So it has all the significant tornado tracks from that day, and we do this kind of stuff to help raise money to give back to some of the victims that happened. So if you're ever interested in wanting to find out on a way you could help, we try to do direct donations to direct towns instead of like a blanket thing to the Red Cross. The Red Cross donation's always great, but you never really know where your money's going. So we try to get a little bit more involved, find a specific charity in a specific town that's been affected, and we try to go about it that way. So we raise more specific money, and we try to do things that way. It's a great group of storm chasers that runs this organization, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. So what can you do to become a meteorologist, storm chaser? Does anybody have somewhat of an interest in that? Maybe because you're all here. Maybe that's a silly question for me. So I see some hands going up. You want to maybe get into the stuff a little more. That's great. I mean, it all starts with an interest. So first part, here's the bad news, especially if you're a kid. I see a couple kids in the audience. You're not going to like what I have to say here. But if you want to get into meteorology and weather, you have to take math. Lots and lots of math. It's all math and it's all science classes. So you want to be proficient in math. They're gonna come at you hard later. So that's something I like to tell you. Got to take the science and math. Another really good thing to do is attend that free spotter training that the National Weather Service does. They're not doing them right now. They typically do them in the spring from about February through early May before severe weather season's getting ramped up. They'll give you a 2-hour presentation. They'll train you all the basics. They get a little bit more in depth. Myself here at ISC, along with Danny, I'm sure a lot of you guys know Danny, we do spotter training courses as well for some fire stations. You know, wherever these classes are, attend one of those. I touched like not even the tip of the iceberg of the technicalities behind spotting and how storms form. We just went over a basic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-step process. We can get into that stuff for hours. So those are great presentations to go. Observe the weather safely from your home. When I was a kid, I kept a weather log. I was a big nerd about it. Whenever it would rain, I'd write down the date, the time, what happened, how bad it was. I drew a little, the bigger the smile, the worse the storm. If it was a frowny face, the storm missed us. I kept a weather log. And that's how I started identifying weather patterns. Like, oh, hey, this month is particularly active. We saw more good storms this month. So I kept a weather log from observing the weather at my house. Ask questions. Do some research, especially now we got this thing called the internet. I'm mostly self-taught for all this weather stuff. I've taken some courses in college and that sort of thing, but I'm mostly self-taught from doing my own research and observing the weather on my own. And then, there's to keep the daily weather logs again. I have that in there twice. Maybe that's very important. And here's kind of a fun one. Another thing you can do, go on a storm chasing tour. Yes, this is a thing, and you're going to see it in one of the videos, some very unfortunate guests, unfortunately. But going on a storm chasing tour. I actually do guided tours with this company right here. They're called Tornadic Expeditions. This is my buddy Eric. He runs the company out from Sherman, Texas. There's me on the right. There's us eating at the Big Texan Steakhouse because storm chasing, as I said, is 9% eating bad food, but it's delicious food. Now this is from a group photo of our tour guests there. They were very happy, but we unfortunately went out during a very slow period of weather. It was 2018. There wasn't a lot to see. But we did see some cool storms, and on down days, we go to national parks. We do all sorts of fun nature stuff, so it's a great time. This would be a way to perhaps learn, and it's very educational. We're constantly teaching the guests. I absolutely love doing it. It's a blast. The guests, they come back every year. I'm doing 3 tours with them next year, Tornadic Expeditions. They're all sold out already. I'm not going to take credit for that, but the ones that I'm doing are sold out already. So unfortunately, if you wanted to try to link up with me on a tour, we're going to have to bump to 2020. They want me to tour with them their whole season, Eric, but when we're doing the storm chasing tours, we do it safely versus when I do it personally, I'm kind of aggressive. So as you saw in that first video, the storm chasing tours, we don't get that close. So I kind of don't want to do my whole season that way, so I only do about half of it doing the tours, but maybe in the future I'll do a whole season for them. But that's another option for you if you actually really want to try to get out there and do some storm chasing. They do 5-day tours, 7-day tours, 10-day tours. They're a bit pricey. They can run from about $1,500 to $3,000 a person, but it covers the hotels, it covers the gas. The only thing you really have to pay for is food. Everything else is covered, admissions to national parks, and they're very educational. The best way to learn this stuff is to see it happen. I can explain it to you folks 100 times. It'll make no sense until you're actually out there seeing it. When you watch the whole tornado genesis life cycle happen before your eyes, it makes a lot more sense. So that is one of the best ways to learn. So we'll just do a little slideshow of pictures here, and then we'll show some video. We'll get into the questions. And then we'll take a look at pesky Florence and see what she's doing. So this is a tornado I saw in Elmer, Oklahoma. We call this a wedge tornado, not named after French fries, but this is a tornado that's wider than it is tall. And above it, we can see that big RFD clear slot that we talked about. So there it is, carving away at the clouds, and it's the RFD's coming in like this, spinning up that tornado, completing the process. So there's a very large tornado that I documented back in 2015. Does anybody know what tornado this is? It's close to home. Not that one, but good guess, though. Not Coal City. That's a good guess, too. Fortunately, those tornadoes happened at night. They were really hard to see. Shanahan, not Shanahan, but it was from the same day. This is actually the Washington tornado from November 17th, 2013. This is my picture of it. So I was on the Washington tornado. So that was definitely a very large tornado, the strongest one that I've seen here in Illinois. This, again, is an example of a mesocyclone. We've got those cloud striations. That is not snow falling. Those are hailstones. So I'm leaning out the window to take a picture, and I got pegged in the hand with a hailstone. My knuckle was bruised for like 3 days. I couldn't move my critical finger. We'll call it the critical finger. So I couldn't move that finger for like 3 days. But it was worth it for the shot, right? I think it's great. Does anybody know what this thing is called? I heard it. This is what we call a shelf cloud. They're actually very common around here. These typically are more bark than bite. They're very scary looking. We just got inundated on Illinois Storm Chasers the other day with a bunch of these pictures last week. There were some of these clouds were roaming the area, and I love to see everybody's photos. We got about 1,000 photos sent to us. And they were great. They're very pretty, but these are typically more bark than bite. They're associated with outflow winds moving away from the thunderstorm, and when we want to get tornadoes, we need inflow winds. So as a storm chaser, when we see a shelf cloud, we're going, game over. But they're very pretty to look at, and they're very photogenic. They're very scary, more bark than bite typically. Sometimes you get mini tornadoes next to the big tornado. So we've got mama tornado and baby tornado next to her. This is a process called vortex arching. We won't get into that, but it is kind of cool to see. Sometimes you see two of them at the same ground of that. I documented this in Kansas in 2016. Doesn't always have to be about ugly tornadoes and big mean storms. The departing storms sometimes reveal the most beautiful skies you'll ever see. This is the setting sun. Ironically, it's after this tornado. So about 4 hours later, this was the sunset we were treated to. As the storm is departing, these are called mammatus clouds. We see those around here occasionally. So you get these beautiful artscapes, these beautiful scenes. Here we got a departing storm with the crepuscular rays from the setting sun. We got a nice little rainbow there. So it doesn't always have to be ugly and nasty. It can be pretty too. There's a lot of the rise in the popularity of storm chasing is photographers and artists. They don't really care about the weather. They're more interested in getting pretty pictures. And that's okay. Everybody has their own reasons for being out there. But these kind of images are drawing a lot more people out there. And they're just kind of interested in the pictures, not necessarily the weather. But it's certainly a great thing there. And then we got the terrible two here. These are the Pilger, Nebraska tornadoes. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, can two tornadoes happen at the same time? The answer is yes, they certainly can. These two tornadoes were side-by-side EF4 tornadoes. So they were both very strong. Unfortunately, they did significant damage to the town of Pilger. Just after this picture was taken, actually, this lead tornado here plowed straight through the middle of town and almost decimated it. There was almost nothing left. Unfortunately, I had to watch that from a hilltop. We're watching the tornado, and all of a sudden, there they were, the roofs, the debris, and we knew, we're like, oh, it's going right through town. So that can happen. So let's look at some video. Is everybody's favorite part? So this is a tornado time lapse. We're going to watch the whole tornado genesis process. This is about 20 minutes of video condensed into about 2 minutes. So we're going to see the whole tornado genesis process take place. I know if it's a little dark, I apologize. This is time lapse, it's sped up. So here, let me move this. Get out of here. So here we got a rotating wall cloud right here. You can see it spinning and spinning and spinning. I'm standing right here going, because I know it's coming, I'm waiting for it. You can see the inflow clouds. Boom, we got a tornado touching down. That guy's like, I'm getting out of here. So setting up my tripod. It actually blew over in the wind. So that was me resetting up my tripod. So now the tornado plants, it's getting a little bit stronger. This is the rain falling through it. It's actually going to clear out here, and we're going to have a classic view of a very large tornado. We're about to see a tornado tour company drive by, I think. for that. It's hard to see, but there's actually two girls jumping on each other's backs right there. Somebody was doing a modeling calendar geared towards weather nerds. I actually didn't buy it, but I was always curious. There's a tour company right there in their tour vans. They pulled over just next to us. They're like, hey, maybe we should actually get out here and watch what's going on. So the unique thing about this tornado is it just sat there in the field and kind of bobbed from side to side. So it went this way, and now it's going to curve back this way. Most tornadoes don't do that. It kind of just sat there in a field and did a figure eight and dug a big hole. So now it's going to move back to the left. It's going to weaken here a little bit. Now watch what happens next. You ever heard the term rain wrapping? Rain wrap tornado. What does that mean? The tornado is going to be rain wrapped. You can't see it. Well, here's what rain wrapping means right here. Would you know there's a tornado back there? And watch these poor people right here. Unfortunately, this can't happen on a tornado tour. You roll up just as it gets rain wrapped, and I'm sitting there screaming, this is the best day of my life, and they're going, what? What happened? Sorry. So that tornado was about half a mile. Let me go back. I'll play the video one more time for you folks. This is my personal storm chasing page on Facebook, by the way. I've got Illinois Storm Chasers, and this is my personal one for stuff that happens outside of Illinois. So this was Bennington, Kansas, come on, go full screen. So we'll watch that again. May 28th, 2013. So what I want you to pay attention to this right here, you're going to see a band of rain shoot in like this just before the tornado drops. That's that clear slot, that rear flanking downdraft completing the process. Right now, we've just got a big rotating wall cloud. This video was sped up 8 times. It did this for about 15 minutes. Just teased me. I was like, are you going to do it? Come on. Well, then you're going to see the rainfall on the left side here. See this big dumping of precipitation? That was that rear flank downdraft completing the process, and that's exactly when the tornado developed. In real time, it was easier to see happening, like, oh, here comes the RFD. It's about the process is about to complete after 15 minutes of being teased by a wall cloud. Sometimes they'll do that, and the storm will just go poof and disappear. And I'm sitting there like, it happens. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But this is the whole tornado genesis life cycle from about wall cloud on, the last 3 steps of the process. It's fascinating to watch unfold, and all that jargon that I just spit out a few minutes ago makes a lot more sense. So again, it's gonna bob to the right. Most tornadoes don't sit still like this one. Later on, I actually drove away from it to reposition. I look back in my mirror and I go, oh, it's still there. I had to turn around and drive back because I'm thinking ahead, I'm thinking forward, reposition to a tornado that was sitting still. So I actually cut my video short there. It was after it went rain wrapped. I'm like, oh, we better reposition. It turns out the tornado sat there, the rain cleared away, and people who stayed there got more video. I made a whoopsie that day. So we're going to see that rain wrapping again. The storm is going to transfer to what we call a high precipitation mode. Now it's what we call a high precipitation supercell versus before it's what we call a classic supercell. That's getting into more of the technicalities of it. But there's that wrapping of rain. There's these poor tour guests who unfortunately paid big money, and they arrived there just a few minutes too late. And the seconds matter in storm chasing. So now this one, I have to make sure the audio is off on this one. I didn't get a chance to remove some friendly words from this one, so I'll kind of narrate what's happening. Okay, it's not playing. Oh, I must be backing up by now. All right, so Wayne, Nebraska, October 4th, this is the fall season. I'm getting in a position to view a tornado here. It's a very large tornado, kind of hard to see. It's partially rain wrapped again. You might not know that that's a tornado. So right here, I'm going, oh, beep, 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 beep. I sound like Morse code. It's coming right towards us. We got to back up. I throw it in reverse. This is me throwing it in reverse. My tires are squealing. We're driving in reverse. This thing's about to mow us over. So here we go. I'm driving in reverse. Like, nuts. This is a mistake. But, of course, my storm chaser brain says, don't turn around and drive straight, drive backwards so you can stick your camera out the window. That's the storm chaser in me. I'm like, if I'm going to die, I'm going to film it. So the tornado's approaching in the field here. Oh, we got to go. Watch right about here. You're going to see a bunch of stuff fly away. Watch, right? See all that? That was my back window. That was the back window. More Morse code. Beep, 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 beep. Like, apologizing to my passenger like, sorry. So we're backing up. This is an EF4 tornado. It's 1.4 miles wide. If you've ever driven alongside Midway Airport in Chicago, has anybody ever been to Midway Airport? Midway Airport is 1 mile on each side. So if you've ever driven across Midway Airport, it's 1 mile. This tornado was 1.4 miles wide. So it could literally swallow the entire Midway Airport. And it's about 100 yards in the field right there. You can kind of see the left edge of it right there, kind of see the right edge of it right there. I'm thinking, okay, all right. Maybe I backed away far enough. We're safe. This guy's like, oh no, gotta go. He's flooring it south. Like when you see a storm chaser backing in reverse, go. So I'm getting my composure here. That's all rain on stuff on the inside of the window. I don't have a back window now. So right here, I think, I didn't back up far enough. This tornado's about to cross the road. There's some haystacks flying. So we're going to back up again, and I get clipped by the tornado right when I start backing up again. There's the right edge of the tornado right there, moving into the field. So that's the right edge of the tornado. More Morse code, like beep, 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 beep. Got to back up some more as the tornado's approaching. So, all right, let's back it up. And we're going to see about 140 mile an hour winds come inside the car. Right there, you can see, I'm like, the edge of the tornado. I better get out of here. I have to edit this video and get those words out of there because the audio is kind of fun. So there's the right edge of the tornado right there. So this, you're about to witness a record right here. That is the tightest I've ever held the steering wheel. The rain, that's all inside the car. I don't even know why the windshield wipers are on because it's not doing nothing. So does anybody want to buy an Expedition? Slightly damp. So now I back up. All right, now I'm like, all right, finally out of the path of this thing. So, okay, there it is. It doesn't really look like your typical tornado because it's 1.4 miles wide. It's just a wall of wind and rain, but it's throwing out 170 mile an hour winds. Again, I don't even know that, okay. I got to clear. That's the clearest I've ever been able to see out of that window. Clean the camera. I've had a lot of video ruined by raindrops, so a mental check is always wipe the camera. So, all right, we're close. Why not go stand outside? All right, I'm going to go stand outside. Check the damage here. All right, what happened? Like, oh, yeah, my truck got damaged. Whoop, rip that thing off. Those are my hail guards. At least I try to be. There's nothing left of the window. So, I'm like, all right. So there's that. One of these days I will edit the video so I can let you listen to the fun. This one I can play the audio for. I was on a solo chase. I don't talk a lot when I'm by myself. It's when there's other people in the car. They get going, that gets me going. When I'm by myself, I'm actually pretty quiet. So this video, I can play the audio. This is that, what we're going to hear here is getting smashed up by big hail. That's the fun part of this one. So we got this is an EF3 tornado, Elmer, Oklahoma. It's going to cross to my south. I'm north of the tornado. We're safe from the tornado, but we got some big hail that I wasn't quite thinking about because I was so fixated on the tornado. Watch the upper left corner of the screen here. Right up here. Boom. That hail was about the size of a grapefruit. Watch right about here. Another hit. You can hear them. Boom, boom, boom. Took one right there. So when things don't go right and you don't move your position carefully enough, you can get bunched up by some pretty massive hail. You can hear them hitting the roof. That's what that thumping sound is. Beep, beep, beep. High auto windshield repair guy. You got another one. I got one in the back room waiting for you. That's what he tells me. Again, we have a very good relationship, me and my auto repair guy. I will answer one of the questions I get asked the most. My insurance does not know. It's always one of the first questions I get asked is how do you get insurance? The answer is they do not know. I hope they're not watching this video. Sorry. But I pay for the damages out of pocket through video. So now this is actually video from the Washington tornado, and I like to use this video for a little bit of education. The other question, even though I showed some videos of kind of oopsies, does this guy even know what he's doing? Like, you're getting in the path of tornadoes. That's not the goal. Do you even know what you're doing? How do you know what way the tornado's going? Well, we're going to learn that here in a real brief second. So this is my video of the Washington tornado. I have to mute this one as well. Sorry. So this video is muted. If anybody checks my YouTube channel after this, there is a parental advisory discretion, whatever that notice may be. So how do I know what direction a tornado is moving? Has anybody here ever seen a tornado? Whoa, wow, a lot of hands going up. All right. Was it by choice or by accident? I'm hearing a lot of choice. I'm hearing some accident, but that's okay. But if you're ever driving and you're not trying to see one and you see one, how do you know what to do? How do you know what direction that tornado is going? It's a very simple method that myself and every other storm chaser uses. I'm going to play this video, just a brief clip here. I'm going to wait for it to zoom in. Okay, so let me zoom in. If you're ever driving along and you see a tornado, pick an object on the ground. I think this video jumps somewhere, so I may have to start this over. But let's look at this farm, grain silo, whatever that structure is. And now watch the tornado. If you ever see a tornado and it's way off in the distance like that, you have a few moments to observe it. There's no reason to panic right away unless it's as close as the one in the video I just showed you. This tornado, we're about 1.5 miles, 2 miles away from the tornado at this point. So if you ever do see a tornado, I always tell people, unless it's almost on top of you, just stop and observe it for a moment. Look at the tornado, look at the ground, pick an object on the ground. It can be a tree, it can be a light pole. Don't pick a person or a car because those move. Pick a tree, pick something stationary. Now when the tornado's moving, I want you to see if the tornado's moving from the right to the left or from the left to the right. Watch this object in the ground and the tornado. See if we can gauge a direction. Is it moving right to left or left to right? The tornado is moving right to left. Now, what that means, when you are looking at a tornado and it is moving from the right to the left, it will pass behind you every time. If the tornado is moving from the left to the right, the tornado will pass in front of you. There's a real easy way to tell if a tornado is moving straight at you. It's not moving right to left. It's not moving left to right. It's sitting still and getting bigger. They go like this. You can't find left to right movement. You can't find left to right and right to left. So if I was able to play this video, in addition to Morse code, you'd also hear it's moving right to left. It's moving right to left. We're okay. We can hold our position. We're good. But that doesn't mean the tornado can't change course, so we still want to watch it. But that's a real easy way to kind of gauge a tornado's path. And that's a very simple thing that we do in the field. So I actually realized I just went over my time. Whoops. I am out of time. Do we want to watch an 8-minute time lapse, or do we want to jump straight into questions? This is the last video that I was going to show before we go into questions. Let's watch it. It's 8 minutes long, and then we'll take. It's narrated. It's a great video. I didn't put this together, but I'm in it. All right. Everybody loves the video. I love it. Okay. This one I can unmute. This kind of shows an entire storm chase. This is filmed by a buddy of mine. Some of you who follow storm chasers closely maybe have heard of Skip Talbot. He's a good buddy of mine. He's a fellow storm chaser from here in Illinois. This was a tornado outbreak from June 17th, 2010, and I will let him tell the story here.
It features 10 tornadoes, including the Congar, Minnesota EF4 that was up to 1 mile wide at its largest and on the ground for over 45 minutes.
Watch that vehicle right there.
This is the most tornadoes I've ever seen on a single chase. 4 of the tornadoes were wedges at one point, and we had 2 circulations on the ground at once during several moments. This day also had some of the best storm structure I've ever seen.
I wonder who that is right there. That looks like a black Ford Expedition.
I had Jenny Neal with me in the van and was caravanning with Adam Lucio and his girlfriend Deb. We originally targeted the dry line in southwestern Minnesota.
Watch what happens when I get around the truck.
The cumulus field that would later spawn our supercell. But the field thinned out as we continued west. We made it to Laverne, Minnesota, and were sitting under clear skies and watched in dismay as our storm started to fire well to the east along the surface trough. We're heading northeast here, trying desperately to catch up with the line of storms that's moving away from us. At this point, I thought for sure that we were going to bust, having fallen well behind the storms. We also did this chase mostly without data, as Adam and I were having technical issues with our data cards or had no signal. The only data source we had was Danny's phone, and we weren't optimistic at this point as it showed a broken line of storms across central Minnesota
and I was
would
in
probably
front of
congeal
him, so
into
we were
a
teaming
linear
up this
mess.
day.
Here are some high-contrast cumulus towers on the back end of the storms, which are severe warned.
So this video, this 8 minutes of video,
we punched
is
through the
about
line of storms
4
here and
hours
came out just north of the
condensed
rear
into 8
flanking
minutes. Skip
downdraft
those
clear
great
spot.
time lapses.
The structure wasn't bad here, despite the storm's lack of a tornado warning. We thought this cell would eventually get interfered with by other cells, so we decided to cut south and make for tail end Charlie, which was now tornado warned and lifting out of Iowa into southern Minnesota. A couple of tornado reports came in right about this time from the storm we're heading to, and I thought for sure we'd miss the show.
Unfortunately, more than once have I driven up to a storm 10 seconds after the tornado.
Just north of Keister, Minnesota, here we had a view of the storm's base. From a distance here, it looked like we had a big cone funnel or wall cloud. However, as we approached, it became obvious that this was probably more of a shelf cloud fanning out from the base. It quickly filled in with rain as well, so we cut north trying to stay ahead of the storm. That's when our storm went crazy with tornadoes. I'll contrast enhance the video here so you can see the first few tornadoes better. When we spotted the first tornado, Danny was calling it out and I didn't know whether to keep driving so we could get closer or stop to make sure I got it on video. So I started swerving all over the road. In the confusion, we lost Adam. You'll get peeks of the first 2 tornadoes as cones on the horizon. When I stop here, you'll see tornado number 3 as a brief rain-wrapped cone behind the second tornado. Our first instance of simultaneous tornadoes for the day.
It's a little dark, I apologize. But they get
There's
closer.
tornado number 2 poking out a few more times. Check out Convective Addiction's Minnesota Mayhem DVD. There's some really good shots of the first 2 tornadoes by Jesse Risley.
Alright, now we're going to see a lot.
We stopped several miles east of the town of Keister, Minnesota to let the storm come to us.
He has a dome.
What we thought was just a large wall cloud emerging through the rain turned out to be a large multi-vortex tornado. Our 4th tornado was a wedge that did some F2 damage to the outside of town.
You'll notice that it's pulling air in from this side. See how it's got a conveyor belt of clouds feeding into it? That's that inflow that we talked about.
You can see multiple suction vortices spinning up underneath the wall cloud. Watch how the inflow band on the right grows dramatically in size too as the inflow increases. Watch right here, you'll see a developing
wall cloud. Right there. That's the other one starting to get going. That's kind of like the first video I showed you, the first time lapse.
The contrast picks up here, and what follows next is the best storm structure I've ever seen. Watch as a new mesocyclone spins up in the foreground just to the right of the old one. As the tornado moved behind the trees, I ran down the road to confirm that it was still on the ground. A glorious white cone tornado with another dissipating in the distance. Perfect storm structure here. 3 tiers of rotation with the mesocyclone at the top, the tornado cyclone or wall cloud in the middle, and the tornado at the bottom. The white stovepipe morphed into a large multi-vortex tornado here. The tornado lifted here, probably leaving a circulation still at the ground.
Those are other storm
before another one quickly descended.
This
is the start of the Conger EF4. We watched a couple of power flashes here before we moved up the road to get closer.
I'm about 2 miles closer than they are, but you're gonna see my truck briefly while they're trying to reposition. That's a scary
huge cone in the distance. We saw emergency vehicles up ahead and figured they had blocked the road off. So we turned around and went west to get to the next north road. We were really worried that Conger was going to take a direct hit here, but as we turned north we could see that the tornado had missed the town to the north. You'll see Adam's truck here on the left as we meet back up coming into Conger. Jesse Risley also came in behind us, and we had all the Convective Addiction chasers on this storm together here. Watch to the right of the main tornado, you'll see a rope satellite tornado next to it. The clouds opened up here giving us a view of a huge cone tornado, with a violent looking debris cloud at the bottom. This is about when the tornado is doing EF4 damage. The tornado took a hard left turn to the north, which we didn't realize at the time. When we emerged from the trees, the tornado has morphed into a large wedge, approaching a mile in diameter. It's very lucky the tornado turned north and dissipated here, as it was heading right for the city of Albert Lea, which would have been a huge catastrophe if this violent tornado hit it. We had to cut through Albert Lea to follow the storm, and we lost track of the base in the process. We waited for the storm on the east side of town, and finally it appeared as a striated supercell. Earlier on, we had bumped into some farmers. I thought they were storm spotters or chasers, so I asked if they were out spotting. I got a confused look and they replied, "We're planting." I warned them about the storm as they were in the path at the time, and they eventually caught up with us here and stayed to watch the storm.
Right.
Watch the left part of the screen when the camera pans here and you'll catch another tornado.
So we'll go back to the... So that's the presentation there. I'll take your questions, your comments, your stories now. I do want to invite anybody and everybody to Burgers and Beer. I've been told that's a very good restaurant near here, so we're gonna head on. We're gonna head on over there. I've been invited out there, so if anyone wants to hang out a little bit longer, I'll be there. We'll be there. So at this time, we'll take some questions. Do we have another mic for? We're all set. So please wait for the microphone. I'll try my best to repeat the questions.
Have you ever been were you in the Joplin tornado?
The Joplin tornado. I was not on the Joplin tornado. That was May 22nd, 2011. Big EF5 tornado tore through the town of Joplin. I was chasing in Iowa that day and did not see a single tornado. But the Joplin tornado was one of the deadliest tornadoes that ever hit our country. Unfortunately, 155 people were killed that day. But I was not on that tornado. But I have some friends who were.
Is it really possible for smaller vortexes to be inside a larger tornado?
Yes, we call those subvortices, and those are associated with what we call a multiple vortex tornado. If you picture a merry-go-round, we've all seen a merry-go-round, right? Have you ever seen the cups on a merry-go-round that are spinning while the merry-go-round is spinning? That's kind of what a subvortex is inside a big tornado, and we call those multiple vortex tornadoes. Now, it's those subvortexes that account for the reason why sometimes when you look at tornado damage, one house is perfectly fine and the house right next to it is completely flattened. It's those little subvortices. If you're unfortunate enough to get hit by one of those, that's why you can have such a varying degree of damage sometimes. We think those little subvortexes are what account for those. Great question.
Have you ever been caught by a tornado?
Yes, I have. In the storm chaser world, we call that the 0 meter club. So I am a member of the 0 meter club. I did show one of the video clips I showed of my window getting blown out was not my inaugural entry into that club, unfortunately, but that has happened before. But yes, now I've never been directly impacted by one where I'm inside one for a minute and have to hunker down. I've always just kind of been clipped by them like that. So, I do my best to get out of there, but I have been impacted by them. Yes.
Are you supposed to open your windows in your house when you hear the tornado warning going out in the sirens?
That's a great question. The common myth is when a tornado is coming, open up your windows to equalize the pressure in your house. That is 100% completely false. You do not need to spend critical time opening up your windows. If you're going to get hit by the tornado is going to open them for you. So you do not need to spend precious time opening windows when a tornado's coming. Great question, though.
Are lightning strikes enhanced during and around tornadoes?
That is another great question. Are lightning strikes enhanced when tornadoes are approaching? There has been a lot of recent study on this that if you divide a supercell that's producing a tornado, the right north quadrant of the supercell, it has been noted that there is a dramatic uptick in lightning before tornado genesis occurs. So this is actually an ongoing study that's happening right now, and there has been some link that we're starting to notice that in the right front, if you think of a car, the right front passenger tire of the storm, that right quadrant, the front right quadrant, sees a dramatic uptick in lightning before tornado genesis. That is an ongoing study right now by a few people that I know. So that is a great question.
It seems as though the rules of the road are kind of out the window when you're driving in these storms. Does law enforcement become a little bit more lenient with you?
Off the record?
Come back! Is law enforcement a little more lenient with you when you're out storm chasing, and do they not let you go too close just for your protection?
It depends on the mood of the officer. I've always had great relationships with law enforcement, but I know some of my friends who haven't. There are some times where officers will block the roads that we're trying to get down, and sometimes they'll drive around and they'll actually chase us and say, hey, don't do that, turn around and go home. Other times the police officers will come up to us, hey, what's going on? They want to see the radar, they want to find out from us. So I've had both scenarios happen, but I'll be the first to admit that storm chasers, the driving involved can sometimes be a little aggressive, especially when you drive 12 hours out and you're seconds away from missing the storm. You want to get there. But we try to work very closely with law enforcement. Traffic issues are becoming an increasing problem out there as the number of chasers continue to increase. So, but we personally, I try to work very closely with law enforcement. I've had just about all positive experiences, but I know some people who haven't. The last 3 speeding tickets I got were on storm chases. So I didn't get one this year or last year, but I went in a 3-year streak. 1 in Texas, 1 in Iowa, and 1 in Kansas. Not here in Illinois, though. Hope the insurance guy's not watching.
Does the terrain of the ground have anything to do with a tornado hitting down? I mean, if it's flat, is it more likely? Or if it's hilly, do they go down in the hillies? Or
a good question. How does terrain affect tornadoes? A tornado can move over every type of terrain, but there are certain parts in the country where the local terrain actually enhances tornado development. One of these areas is located in eastern Colorado, what we call the Denver Cyclone, the Denver Convergence Zone. There, the flat terrain, there's like a mountain range is kind of shaped like a C, like this, and what happens is the surface winds get trapped in there, and they spin like this. That enhances tornado development. The county in the country that sees the most tornadoes is actually in Colorado. People don't think about Colorado as a state, but terrain can influence tornado development in certain spots. A tornado can move over a mountain, across a lake, down a river. There certainly is no protecting barrier when it comes to terrain. Again, it's kind of a yes and a no. There are certain areas where it can thwart development sometimes, but the weather can always overcome it given the right circumstances.
If you're out on the open road, what do you do if you're driving and there's nowhere to get in to? Do you keep driving, or do you try and stop somewhere, or?
If you're driving and no shelter is available, again, I always try to advise observe the tornado, see if you can gauge its direction. If you know it's going to pass in front of you, turn around and drive the other way and drive away from it. If it's at you and no other, like you're completely zeroed out and you have to end up in a farmer's field like I do. Our road ran out and we were stuck. The thing was coming right at us. The absolute best thing to do is try to find the ditch, get as low as you possibly can. Get behind a rock, behind just something. Find a way to protect yourself. Do not stay in your car. Tornado can toss a car like a toy. So you want to get as low as possible. Even if you have to put your car in 4-wheel drive and grind your wheels into the mud and stick your car in there. Some of the guys were doing that. I wasn't the only one who got stuck in the field that day. There were 10 other storm chasers out there. If you're all out of options, the best thing you can do is to find a way to get as low as possible. But you definitely do not want to stay in your car. But the easiest thing to do is to drive away and to gauge its direction. Most of us, I think, don't travel on a lot of dirt roads and beaten paths. We're typically on a main highway somewhere. So you can gauge its direction and drive the other way 99 out of 100 times.
Did you ever get a chance to meet Tim Samaras, his son, and his good friend that were tornado chasers that were killed in a really horrible?
Yes. Have I ever met Tim Samaras, his son Paul, and his chase partner Carl Young? Unfortunately, they were 3 very experienced tornadoes who perished in 2013. They were good friends of mine. When I would drive the TIV, Tim Samaras was always with us. He was doing the research side of it. Sean Casey, driving the TIV, was trying to get the extreme video. So I've spent many a time with Tim Samaras, his son Paul, and his chaser pal Carl Young. So they were good friends of mine. That was a very devastating day for us all.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. One is rope tornadoes that you see they mostly occur in the north, am I right? And also, northern tornadoes typically have a higher cloud base, so you have more exposed tornado?
There is some truth to that. The question is about rope tornadoes having higher cloud bases. You may be thinking of landspouts, which is a different type of tornado. Now, the tornadoes I've been talking about are the mesocyclonic tornadoes. There's actually another class of tornadoes called landspouts. That's like 1% of tornadoes that form without a mesocyclone. Those typically have higher cloud bases. They're very skinny, they're very narrow. And those typically occur in the higher elevations of the high plains, eastern Colorado, eastern Wyoming. When I say Colorado is one of the most active tornado zones in the country, most of them are those landspouts. So there is a little bit of truth to that. When a big tornado dissipates, it goes through what we call a rope out phase. They don't just go poof like they do in the movie Twister. They're real big, they're real wide, and then they get skinny and they rope out. So there's a couple different answers to that question. But go ahead. Yes, what part of a storm are tornadoes typically most found in? Is that the southwest part of the storm? The answer is yes. The tornado is typically most often found on the southwest side of the thunderstorm. That's where that hookup goes. I wish I had a radar example I could pull up for you. Let me see if I can find an example of that real quick. I know where I've got one. So, it's under PowerPoint material. You're seeing some of the guts of how these presentations come together. Where are you at? There we go. So what part of a thunderstorm do the tornadoes? The southwest quadrant of the thunderstorm? The answer is yes. They are typically found in this part of the thunderstorm here. This whole area here is the updraft region. See this little sliver right here? Where there's not the big scary red? That's actually the updraft region of the thunderstorm, and that's where the tornado is going to be, on the southwest part of the thunderstorm. Now, this is a thunderstorm that's moving this direction, but if you were to take the thunderstorm and move it this direction to the southeast, the tornado would be up here. You kind of have to rotate the whole storm clockwise or by 90 degrees. But that typically is the spot of a thunderstorm where tornadoes are most found.
So since lakes and the city don't have an impact on the tornadoes, why does it always seem like the storms dissipate as they approach the city?
Because those myths, the question is, why does it seem like sometimes the storms dissipate as they approach the city? Those are myths, they're not true, but they are based on a small level of facts. The air over Lake Michigan is often very cool and very stable, which is not a good environment for thunderstorms. So there are a lot of times where thunderstorms are approaching the city and they hit that cool, stable lake air, and yes, they will dissipate and they will die. But there have been several documented cases in history where the tornadoes will go right up to the lakeshore. There's a video filmed on September 22nd, 2006 from the Loyola University campus in Chicago. The tornado, the thundercloud moved over O'Hare, and the tornado didn't touch down until it was on the shore of Lake Michigan. And there's video of the tornado becomes a big tornado out on Lake Michigan. So it just takes the right meteorological conditions to overcome what typically happens. We'll say 90% of the time they dissipate, but all it takes is the 10% has to happen at some point, and it will.
Are there other hot spots globally where tornadoes occur?
Yes, there are. South America, Argentina sees a good amount of tornado activity. Here's one you might not think of. South Africa, the country of South Africa, experiences a lot of tornadoes. Another hot spot, they've been documented in France. They've been documented, for some reason, Italy. Italy's been a hot spot lately. I've seen tornado video out of Italy that makes me jealous. And I'm Italian. I'm like, I need to go to my home country and go chase over there because they get some good ones out there. But here in the United States, we see the widest and the strongest. Tornadoes do happen all around the globe, and there are a couple other hot spots out there. But we get the strongest and the most intense right here in Tornado Alley.
If you can't find a ditch or anything to get behind or under, should you get under your car? Should you get under your car if literally nothing else is available? That's a tough one to answer because
if the car rolls, it's all about trying to minimize the risk. So I suppose if there is nothing, like literally absolutely nothing else, I would probably get under my car because at least you're protected from above, from debris falling, debris flying, and you just hope the tornado's not strong enough to pick up your car. But at least you're protected from falling debris. It's all about giving yourself the best chance possible. Nothing is 100% foolproof, but you want to give yourself the best chance possible. So I would probably get under my car. I wouldn't say that's like straight up advice, like get under your car because your car could roll on top of you. But if it's a weaker tornado, you're at least protected from falling debris or big hail. You don't want to take a softball-sized hailstone to the head. You'd rather have it hit your car. So assuming no other shelters available, I probably would get under my car. Great question.
Is there always hail for a tornado?
There is not always hail before a tornado, but a lot of times if a storm is strong enough to produce a tornado, it's typically strong enough to produce large hail. So most of the time there will be large hail in a thunderstorm that's producing a tornado, but not all the time. I've seen tornadoes on days where I haven't even seen a drop of rain, which stinks because I get bugs and mud all over my windshield, and I count on that rain to clean it. So on days we get into rain with the tornado, I'm trying to film through a dirty windshield.
Any training online you could recommend as far as like Spotter Network or MedEd? Enough?
Spotter Network does have a very brief training. The question was, is there any good things online? There's stuff all out there. There's a website called theweatherprediction.com. That's a very great educational site. The National Weather Service has all the information they present in their presentations available online. You just kind of have to read through it yourself versus them showing it to you. But there's not really a spotter course online that would like certify you for the National Weather Service or anything. You have to go in person and have some bozo like me explain it to you. But there's resources out there, and I can point you towards some of them. We've got a list of resources on IllinoisStormChasers.com. There's a couple links there you could follow that'll point you in the right direction. And we always post the spotter training schedule when the National Weather Service releases it, so we'll post that schedule as well when they do it.
What do you do in the off season?
Wait for the main season. But no.